What's up guys, it's TSL here. Welcome back to a new video. I know it's been a while, but I'm excited to be back and I hope you guys are too. Today I will be teaching you guys how to make a armor system in Roblox. So we're going to start out here with a little bit of setup. We're going to make our remote events that we'll be using later on in the videos. If you guys don't know what a remote event is, it's basically a way for your scripts to communicate. Remote events are used to communicate between server and local scripts so that they can communicate between the client and the server. This keeps things organized and also allows the client to do things that it wouldn't be allowed to do, or for the server to apply certain checks that we need to make sure that the users aren't doing anything they're not supposed to be doing. So we're going to go ahead and replicate the storage and create a remotes folder. Let me add an S to that. And then inside of the folder, we're going to have a folder for our server remotes. And then we'll have another folder for our client remotes. And just because I'm going to be assuming that you guys are going to have this in another game with more stuff, I'm going to make an armor system folder inside of both of these. Alright, so now let's add the events we'll be using. For our server, these are like the things that are updating. So remember, our server is our backend. This is like the real stuff that's happening. This is where all the data is actually being processed and the stuff that actually matters. Because without the server, we won't be able to validate anything that the user actually does. So the things that we'll need here is stuff like adding our items to our inventory. So we'll call an add inventory item remote. We'll have a delete armor UI, and actually, sorry, this is for the client. So I'm gonna move these into here. Let's just finish our client ones at this point. We'll need a load inventory, and I think that should be it. So the client, this is like all the stuff that the user will see on their end. So like I mentioned, adding the inventory item so that we add a new thing to the inventory display. Delete armor UI is exactly what it sounds like, and load inventory will just when the player joins the game, it will load all of the inventory items that they have onto the UI. So this is basically going to be something similar to this. It's like a batch. It does a bunch of them at once. On the other hand, for our server, we will have a few more events. We will have an add armor, a delete armor, an equip armor, and then an unequip armor. And then actually what I want to do real quick is I want to change our equip armor, or actually our add armor. I want to delete that one real quick, and I'm going to make this a remote or a bindable event. And a bindable event is basically for server scripts, or not just server scripts, but for scripts on the same level. So server scripts to communicate with each other. And if you use them in a local scripts, it would be a local script to local script communication. This will be for our add armor. And basically, you guys will see why we're doing this, but basically what this will allow us to do is call the add armor event that is handled on a server script from a separate server script. And then we need another bindable event, and this one will be called load inventory. Now, these are not necessary for some cases, but the way we will be doing this today, we're going to be using like this. This is basically going to be used, you'll see later, to integrate with like a separate data store manager script, rather than doing it all in one script. And then one last thing we'll need is a bindable function. Basically the same thing as a bindable event, except because it's a function, we can return data from it. And this will become our get inventory. Once again, all the bindable events and bindable functions are going to be used to integrate with a separate data manager script. Real quick, I'm going to show you guys this Armor UI that I have over here, so you guys can copy it. I have an Armor inventory frame, and it's just basic UI. Doesn't really matter too much what's in it. Control bar with a close button, um, a delete button. So this delete button, I guess I could share a little bit about this because the functionality is edited by the script, but you can just take those parts out if you don't want them. But basically right now what I have is just a basic delete button, background transparent, and then I have a UI stroke on it to make the little outline. And basically the way this is going to work is when you click on the delete button, it's going to fill in to show that you're toggled on the delete mode, so then you can click on all the items. And then we have our actual inventory scrolling frame, and it just has a UI grid layout so that everything lays out in a grid once it's added. And then on the other side, we have a player preview frame, and inside of it, there's another frame with the armor previews, and this just has a slot for the chest plate, helmet, and leggings. And it's a UI list layout, so I should probably reorder these so that they make sense. Okay, now our helmet's on top, chest plate in the middle, and leggings. And yeah, that's basically all we need for now. So other than this, let me make this visible false again real quick. We have a confirm delete frame outside, separate, and this is just very basic properties you copy, and nothing special, just text label and two buttons. And then I could delete, or not delete, but hide that. And then we have a similar stats overlay frame, and this just has the armor title, the armor name, health label, and speed label. Once again, no scripts on this, just basic. And then we have just the toggle button. I very simple, just toggles the armor inventory. All right, so now that that setup's out of the way, let's get into actually making this. Alright, so let's get into this. We're going to first start off by listing out all these services that we'll be using. It's always nice to keep your scripts organized. So our first thing will be SS, which stands for server storage. So that'll be game get service server storage. Local RS equals to game get service replicated storage. That's where we store all of our remotes. And then our players is equal to game get service players. Next, we need to have a reference to our modules. So we'll have a local modules is equal to ss.modules, or actually rs.modules. And you guys might be wondering, what is rs.modules? And you guys are wondering that because we haven't made them yet. So before we continue with this script, first thing I want to do is rename this to armor manager. And then I'm going to close this, and I'm going to go over to replicated storage, add a folder, and I'm going to call this modules, and then I'm going to add another folder inside of this, once again, just for organization's sake, and call it armor. And then we're going to be doing an object-oriented programming style, aka OOP style, for this. So we're going to have 3 module scripts, and let's just make those 3 real quick. Our first one will be armor class. Our second one will be armor index, and then our third one will be armor types. So I think the best one to start off with will be armor class. Let me zoom in for you guys a little bit, make it a little easier for you guys to see. And let's start from the top. So the first thing, I want to rename this to armor, just makes more sense that way. Alright, so now that that's renamed, what we're going to do here is set armor dot underscore underscore index equal to armor. This is what we use in Roblox module scripts to set up object-oriented programming with meta tables. So this basically says that any instance of armor meta table will have all of the functions associated with the armor data. That's the basic thing, all you need to know for now. So basically what we can do is function armor.new, and we'll pass in our data as our parameter, and we'll make a local self equal to set meta table, new table, and then our armor. So once again, this is setting a meta table of our armor class instance, which means that we can use any methods or any functions, aka methods, on the armor class by just calling self. This, if you guys don't really get it right now, I promise it'll make more sense. Just stick with it. So real quick, what we'll do is self.name is going to be equal to data.name. Self.type will be data.type. Self.defense is equal to data.defense or 0. Defense is going to be just like how much extra health it gives, and adding the or 0 means that it's optional. Once again, data is something that we'll be passing in from another script when we create the armor. And then we'll have a similar thing here for speed boost. Same principle. And then we'll have a self.model equal to data.model. And then we will return self. So returning self allows us that in the script where we'll do like local new armor equals armor.new, then we can call any methods because armor.new or new armor will be this self object. Once again, I promise it'll make more sense in a little bit, and I'll come back when it does make more sense to explain it more. So what we'll need now is to create our methods for our armor. So the first one we'll do is armor::apply to. And we want a player parameter. And I guess now it might make a little bit more sense. So you see here we have a dot syntax, and that just means, well, that's how we'll use it, right? That is how we create the new armor. When we have the colon syntax, so this is your typical function. When we have the colon syntax, this is what we call a method. A method is a function that it belongs to a specific class, basically, is the way you can think about it. So before I was talking about how local new armor can be equal to armor.new, and that we pass in whatever data we have here, right? And because we return the self, our new armor now points to the self object. If you recall, our self object was a meta table of our armor class that we created. And because we set the armor index equal to armor, this meta table allows us to access all the methods. So since new armor points to self, we can do we can either do it in one line or we can do on the next line new armor::apply to. We can actually use these methods, and what this gives us access to is in these methods we have properties on the self object. So we can access self.name, for instance. If we print self.name, and if we passed in, let's say, name equals PSL, then this would print self.name. Alright, so I hope you guys have a better grasp on that. We can always revisit that later, or if you want a separate video explaining object-oriented programming or just meta tables in general, then definitely comment that below and I'll be sure to make one of those. But for now, let's continue. So what we want is our character, so we can get that player.character, and in case the character or the player is currently in a dead state, then we can wait for the character to respawn by using player.character added :wait. And then we want to get the humanoid object off of the player, or off of the character. So we'll do character :wait for child humanoid. So here what we can do is apply our boosts. So recall we added the defense and speed boost. You can add other stuff that you want to, but that's all we'll cover in this tutorial. And then the first thing we want to do is add a was max health check. Okay, thank you, Windows. Was max health check, and our was max health will be equal to humanoid.health equals to humanoid.max health. So once again, this just checks if the player is currently at max health. And then if they were at max health, or first what we'll do is set humanoid at max health, and we'll add our defense boost to it, right? So either 0 or a number that we add to it. So let's say defense was 10, then we'll add 10 to our player's max health. And now here's where the was max health comes in. If we were at max health, then we want to set the humanoid's current health equal to our new max health, right? Basically, the reason why we want to do this is because if we just add to the max health, then the player it will appear that they're at a really low health if you have like a really high max health now. Just because of the way that the progress bar scales, or the health bar scales, and they'll actually be only at 100 health if you add 900 defense, and now the max health is at 1,000. They have to wait all the way. But we also don't want it if they're in combat and then apply a new armor. We don't want to just give them all their health back. So if they're currently at max health, then we can give them the max health that the armor is giving them now. Otherwise, they have to wait to regen like they would normally. I hope that makes sense. And then the other one's much more simple. Humanoid dot walk speed, and once again we just add speed boost. By the way, if you guys are unfamiliar, we can use this plus equal as a shorthand syntax. The other way to do it would be humanoid dot walk speed plus self dot speed boost. I prefer the other way because it's a lot cleaner and more concise, so it's just easier, but that is the same thing. This just stands for plus equals, and it adds this value to itself. Okay, so now that we've applied the boosts, we want to apply the model. And actually, we should do one check first before we apply any boosts, and check if we actually have a model. So if not self.model, then we want to return end. Return will just exit us out of the function, so if we do not have a model, then we're just going to exit. Alright, otherwise, now we know we do have a model, so we can actually apply it. What we're going to do is do for child in self.model colon get children do. Alright, and before we go any further, I want to actually show you guys what our models look like. So here we have two models. We have wooden armor, and then this one's cardboard armor. And basically the way it's arranged is inside of it, we have first of all, make sure the names match up. So we have our wooden armor, and then inside of it we have a chest plate, a helmet, and a leggings. Make sure that they're all positioned where you want them to be positioned, and that inside of them you have the name of the body part. So left leg, because this goes on left leg. You see, this is the left leg of the player, and this is the left leg part of the legging. Make sure that these names are exactly the same, or the script will not work. Now that we have that concept in place, we can apply this principle. So our clone, first of all, we will clone the child, and the parent, we will look for the parent, which is char colon find first child, and then we should just be able to do child.name. Once again, this is because these names need to be exactly. So if this name is not exactly the same as this body part name, then we will not actually be able to find that part in the child or in the character. Therefore, there will be no parent. If there is no parent, then we just want to probably destroy the colon first, and then we can continue. Continue works kind of similar to how we used return further up in the script, but instead of exiting the entire function, this just continues to the next iteration in the loop. Next, we want to create a weld. We will create a new weld constraint, and this is so that the models, or the armor models, actually follow along with the player when they walk and move. And a weld parent will be equal to clone, and the weld part 0 will also be equal to clone, and then the weld part 1 will be equal to the parent. Finally, we'll just say that the clone's name is equal to the child's name. So the clone's name is going to be equal to the body part name concatenated with armor. This is how we concatenate strings in Lua. If you don't know, concatenating is just a fancy way of saying combining strings. So now we're going to do some offsetting. So our original parent is going to be the model.parent colon find first child.name. So like I said earlier, you want to make sure that these are positioned how you want them to be positioned on a character like this. And we're now going to do apply some math and positioning onto it so that the positions get translated properly and rotated right. So our offset is going to be equal to our original parent dot cframe colon 2 object space child dot cframe. So cframe, basically it's position, but it includes the rotation inside of it as well. Original parent, this is the parent of the actual model that is being cloned, not the actual cloned model that is being placed onto the character. This is so that we can calculate those offsets based on that original parent. And then now we just want to set the clone cframe equal to the parent's current cframe. So this is the parent that we are applying the new armor to, and we want to multiply it by that offset we just calculated. And then one final thing we want to do is, if we are dealing with a helmet, then we want to get the local description equals to humanoid colon get applied description dot hat accessory equals 0, and then hair accessory equals 0, and then humanoid colon apply description. This is not necessary, but what this does is it removes any hats, hoods, hair, or whatever that players might have on if they're wearing a helmet, so that you don't get the hair poking through. I hope that's just optional if you want, just purely aesthetic. And then finally, what is not optional is actually parenting the clone to its parent. We want to do this at the end. It's just better for performance sake to parent everything at the end rather than keep adding stuff once it's already parented, because then, especially with positional things, it will have to redraw. And then we need one more method here, and this will be armor colon remove from. So this is just going to do the opposite thing. Once again, we need a player, and let's just copy these two lines the same, and then we just want to we can copy this part too. We can remove this line, and we can actually just reverse that to subtract. And here I'm noticing a spelling mistake. This should be speed boost. There we go. Alright, now let's go through and delete everything. So for child in self.model colon get children. And I don't think I explained this before, but what this is doing is it's looping through every child of the armor, and the reason we're doing underscore comma here is because we don't care about the index. This is just a number. It doesn't matter to us. All we need is the actual child part itself. Then we'll get the parent equal to the character colon find first child.name, same thing as above. If we don't find a parent, then we just want to continue, and otherwise we want to find the armor, which, if you remember, should be in the parent, and it should be called the same name, just concatenated with armor. So make sure if you change this, then you update this accordingly. And then if we don't have armor for whatever reason, then we just want to continue. If we do have it, then we want to destroy it. And that should be it for our armor class script. Now we can move on to our armor index. That's not armor index, armor index. And here, what we'll need is our local rs equals to game colon get service replicated storage local armor modules equals to rs.modules.armor, and then local armor, this will be the class, equals require script.parent.armor class. I guess what we should do is armor modules.armor class, and then we'll need our armor types and armor types. And then we don't actually need any of that. We could just do a return with the table normally. So if you don't know require, this is how we actually call into module script so that we can use everything inside of it. That's how we do it in Roblox. It's like an import statement in other languages if you're familiar with those. And actually I'm realizing now we should probably do our armor type script real quick. Very short. All we need is a return with the table. And what we're going to have is a helmet. If I can spell. Chest plate. And leggings. Alright, and whoops, that's all we need for our armor types. Now back to our armor index. Very simple. Remember I showed you we have cardboard armor and wooden armor. So what I'm going to do is just fill in the script accordingly. So the first thing is the name of the armor, cardboard, and then so this is the class of armor, I guess you could call it. Like I said, we have cardboard armor, so calling it cardboard first, and then chest plate. This is the type. So the name is just going to be cardboard chest plate. Same thing as this. And then the type is going to be armor types.chest plate, of course. And then these are the stats on it. Do the same thing for everyone. See, we have cardboard helmet, cardboard leggings, and then we have our wooden chest plate, wooden helmet, wooden leggings. You see we have these armor models here. So let's actually, I already have these folders set up. So remember, just have a folder, call it armor models with the armor models in it. I have the actual dummy rig there to see how they sit accordingly too. And actually you need them as well so that we can, like I mentioned earlier, calculate the position and offset. And then you just want to parent this folder into replicated storage. And then in our armor index, we'll do a armor models equals to rs.armor models. And now all those errors should go away. So we have our armor models.cardboard armor.chest plate, which just refers to armor models, cardboard models, chest plate. And the same thing for all the rest of them. Okay, so now those are done, and we should be able to go back to our armor manager. So if this will type, our local armor modules will be equal to modules.armor modules or armor. And then our armor database, we can call it, or I guess just be consistent, armor index will be require armor modules.armor index. Oh, and sorry, one thing I probably should have clarified is here we're using our armor.new statement from our armor class. Remember we had this data object, so that is what this table is referring to. All of these properties, that's what they are. So yeah, we just need our armor index, and then we're going to reference some of our remotes here. So our remotes equal to rs.remotes. We'll have our server, or we'll call them sarmor remotes equal to remotes.server.armor system. And then we'll have our carmor remotes, which is just the client ones. And then we'll separate this into our equip, which is our sarmor remotes.equip armor. And we'll need all of these So we'll have unequip, we'll have add armor, and delete armor. And just for the sake of naming, I'm going to add event to all of these so we can differentiate them from their handler. And then I should name these so that the correct events are being referenced. So those are our surfer ones, and these are like the actual actions. And then here we'll have our load inventory event equal to server or s armor remotes dot load inventory, and then get inventory. And then we want our client ones, and this will be our add to in UI equal to c armor remotes dot add inventory item. And then we'll just have the load inventory UI, which is client load inventory. We'll have a delete armor UI, which is delete UI. All right, then we'll have our state variables, which is just our armor inventories, and this is going to be a local state tracker for what every player is wearing or what every player has equipped. And then here we'll have our actual functions / our handlers, and then at the bottom we'll have our connections. So real quick, we'll make a local function equip. We'll have one for unequip. We'll have one for delete. And we'll have one for add armor. All right, those. So these are our function handlers, or here are our functions overall. And then here are our actions. Remember, I called them actions earlier. And then below we'd have our data store helpers, and those will be our functions like load inventory, which will take in a player in a saved inventory. And then we'd have a function like get inventory for when the player loads in. And then we'll have a, I don't know, misc category where we'll have our function player added with a player, of course. All right, so now that we have our outlines for the functions that we'll need, we'll first of all we'll just connect them real quick to make sure we don't forget, and yeah, and then we'll go through and fill them out. So first things first, let me add one more thing here. Player remove. All right, so now we're going to add our connections. So we have our equip event dot on server event :connect equip, and then just similar things all around. We have our delete armor event, and we connect it to our delete armor function. We have our unequip event, and we'll do unequip, and then our what's the final one? Add armor event, and then add armor. And then the ones for our data store helpers, our load inventory event. This is a bindable event, so we use the .event :connect, and we'll connect that to our load inventory. So that's the difference between bindable and remote events. For bindable events, you just do .event. For remote events, you do on server event. And then for a bindable function like get inventory event, we use .on invoke, and we have to set that equal to our function. Okay, and then our misc ones are player added dot, or this is a little different. All right, we do have our player service up top, so we do our players.player added, and we connect that to our player added. This is a Roblox event. fires every time a player joins the server, and then there's a corresponding one for when a player leaves the server called player removing. Okay, so now let's go through and fill out some of these functions. We'll start at the top, and the first thing we want to do is check if we don't have, or check if our player is in our inventories, our armor inventories already. To do that, we actually need a player to be passed through, and we're also going to need a armor name for that matter. So if they are not, then we just want to create a basic table for them. And then what we're going to do is we're going to look to see if the armor inventories if our player's inventory, so this is a reference to our player's inventory, because the way the armor inventory is laid out is we have a user ID, like pretend that's my user ID, and then that's equal to a table or a list of data that we'll have. And that's actually going to be sectioned into unequipped, which is just going to be a list of all your things, like let's say cardboard, helmet, wooden chest plate, things of that nature. And then we'll have an equipped, and this one is actually going to be a dictionary, and that's going to be like helmet equals wooden helmet, right? That's how the inventory is going to be structured. Okay, so just in case, so actually what we're gonna do is look for our armor inventories and look in our player's inventory and check if they have an unequipped table. If they don't, then we just want to return an empty table there so we don't get an error. And in the table.find function, the thing we're looking for is our armor name. So basically what this statement is doing is verifying that we have the armor to equip. So that whether that be that they own it or just that it is not currently equipped. So if that is nil, then we just want to exit. That means that the player doesn't own the item, or maybe they do own the item, but it's currently equipped, so they shouldn't be able to equip it. This shouldn't happen, but this is just a sanity check, or a sanity check as they call it. This is just what's called a sanity check to make sure, this is to prevent exploits. So if a malicious user fired the event without actually like passed in a armor name that they don't own, they can't actually equip it because the server knows that they don't own it. And then finally, or not finally, next we want to get our armor data, so our armor index and our armor name. This should get us all the data about our armor, and if for whatever reason we don't find the armor, then we just want to exit because we can't do anything if we don't have the armor. Now we want to do another table find, or actually we can't use table.find for this one. We'll just have to go through our armor inventories, our player, and then our equipped. We can't use table.find because, like I mentioned earlier, this is a dictionary. But what we can do is armor.type here and just check if it exists. That's all we really need. So first we want to check if this exists, and then second we want to check if we have an armor of the same type currently equipped. If we do have an armor of the same type currently equipped, then we want to call our unequip. So this actually can't be a local function because it's under. Then we want to call our unequip function, and we're going to pass in our player, and we're going to pass in the armor that is currently equipped. So that gives us our parameters for the next one, which is our armor and armor name. So this should probably be .name. Okay, so like I mentioned, this unequips the currently equipped armor of the same type. And then once that is unequipped, then we can actually equip our new armor. So that's easy. All we have to do is armor :apply to, and remember this is the method that we created in the armor class. So we just apply to player, and then that should be applied. All the boosts should be applied, and you should see the model on the player. And then all we need to do is set our armor inventories at our player user ID. We want to set the equipped table. We want to update it. And we're just going to copy that over. And so this is just making sure that we don't have an empty table. And now we can just change our armor.type and set it equal to our armor. Okay, so that's it for the equip function. That should be working fine. And now we're going to go through our local armor equals to armor index, armor name, same thing as before. If we don't find it for whatever reason, just exit. Okay, so if our armor or our inventory for our player doesn't currently exist, then we want to just set it to an empty version of what it should look like, a bare bones skeleton version, if you will. And then otherwise, we want to ensure otherwise we want to ensure that we have a currently equipped armor. So this is just the same thing that we did up here. And if we don't, then we can just exit the function because we don't have anything equipped right now. These when you do like inverse if statements like this, instead of doing an if statement and nesting, that's what's called a guard clause, and it's just helpful to keep things more organized instead of like nesting a bunch of its if statements into deep layers, which can get very confusing very fast. Otherwise, what we want to do here is we have verified that it exists, so we want to call our remove from method. Once again, this comes from our armor class because everything in the equipped version or in the equipped dictionary is a reference directly to an armor instance. And now what we'll want to do is grab this, change this to unequipped. So if we don't have that for whatever reason, then we just want to set it to an empty table. And then we want to insert from our unequipped, or insert to our unequipped, our armor.name. So this adds the armor that we just unequipped back to the unequipped table. And now what we need to do is actually remove it from the equipped table. So equipped at our armor.type equals to nil. And then here is where we do our add inventory UI and we'll fire client player armor name. We haven't actually implemented this yet, so I'm gonna comment that out so we don't forget. And then our next functions are quite a bit shorter. So we'll start with our delete. We'll have a successful deletions equals to this. And for underscore comma name, once again, we don't care about the index, so we can just replace it with an underscore. In our armor names, the parameters we need is our player and armor names. we want to get an index, which is going to be table.find player or armor inventories player.user ID and our unequipped table, and we'll do the same thing with the or blank in case this is not initialized, so that we don't get any errors. And we're going to be looking for the name of the armor. If we don't find the index, so if our index is nil, then we want to continue to the next iteration. Otherwise, we want to remove from the unequipped table that index, and we want to insert our successful deletions the name. And then at the end of this, what we do is call our remove UI or delete UI colon fire client with our player and our successful deletions, so that we can the reason we have the successful deletions is so that we can delete all the corresponding UIs. And then finally, we'll do the add armor function, which once again is a very simple function, actually even simpler than the previous one. First thing we want to do is pass in our player and armor name. So then we can finish typing this out, armor db or armor index, armor name. If it doesn't exist for whatever reason, exit. And armor inventories player.user ID. Then we can just set it to this. Boom. At the end here, when we add armor inventories player.user ID and unequipped armor name. I guess a better name than add armor would be like buy armor, but I think add armor works fine too. But when you get a new piece of armor, it's gonna automatically be unequipped instead of equipped. And then here we'd add to our inventory UI our player and armor name. Alright, so at this point, most of the functionality is actually there. And if you were to call like the functions like equip, you would see that it would work. And to actually demonstrate this, let's go to the bottom of the script and we'll have demo. And we'll have our new armor is going to be equal to add armor. Or actually we don't need that. We're just going to call our add armor function. Let's actually do this for our testing purposes. In our player added function, we'll add armor to the player that joins, and we'll give them a free, let's say, wooden chest plate. And you know what? Let's give them a free cardboard leggings as well. So then what we can do is we can equip our player and these same things. And what you should hopefully see is that these will actually be equipped. But actually one thing we can do real quick is the actual player added functions. We'll create a local function here called make block. And this is our character. What this function is going to do is make the characters blocky. I don't know if you'll want to do this for your game, but I definitely want to do this for my armor system version, because the armor is made for blocky characters. So we're going to add a quick little wait here to make sure everything for the character is fully initialized. And then we're going to get our humanoid character wait for child humanoid. Our description, just like before, is going to be humanoid get applied description, and then we're just going to set a bunch of these equal to 0, 0, make them blocky. So head 0, left arm 0, right arm 0, left leg 0, left arm, nope, that's not right, right leg 0, and then torso, and that should be good. Then we just do humanoid colon apply description and apply our description. So like I said, this just makes the character blocky. Our local character will be equal to player dot character or player dot character added colon weight, just like we did in the other script. We'll make block character, and then we'll have a player dot character added colon connect function character, and we're going to do make block character. So character added colon wait will wait for the character to respawn, and that'll just be a one-time thing. And then this connection here makes whatever inside of this function, it'll make it run every time the character respawns. Although it usually doesn't work on the first player added, that's why we have the make block outside as well. And then what we want to do is check if we have an inventory and an equip table, and if we do, then we want to loop through all the armor in this inventory because it should be equipped, but since we got respawned, all of the models got deleted, so we're just going to pop a quick equip on this, and then player. Actually, what we really should do is probably just armor colon apply to, and then our player. Just put it back on the player. And then we have all this stuff for the demo. Let me just add a comment demo. And then on our player remove, all we want to do is clear our local state. Alright, cool. So if we go ahead and click play, we have an error. On server event is not a valid member of bindable event. So like I pointed out earlier, this should be event. I just forgot add armor is also a bindable event. Now all of our errors are gone, but I don't actually seem to have any of the stuff on me. So what I want to do is in our add armor, I want to print player armor name, print found, and this should be different now. Just see. Okay, so we find it, so that's working. And then let's just print our inventory to make sure I actually add inventory correctly. See, boom, okay, so yes, they are in our inventory. So that means something in our equip function. So we're equipping. And I think the error lies right here in our equip function. Actually, no, shouldn't. That's illustrated actually. Let's put our armor name. Okay, so it looks like it's trying to things. Here, print our armor. This is likely we're wrong, maybe it's not exactly, but it's not a mistake. Actually, no, it looks right. So that's working. Next thing would be print apply. And let's go to our armor class and print self model. Make sure that we have a model. Okay, we do. So that part's working. So there's something going wrong in the apply function. Let's make sure. Okay, so I think. Let me see something real quick. Are we getting the boosts applied to us? Yes, we are. Our boosts are applied, so just the models aren't showing up. If I look, oh, okay, the reason is not in the script at all, actually. It's because, you know, let me go and show you guys real quick. Currently my game is running on R15, which means I have like left foot, left hand, and then I have left lower arm and left lower leg instead of just left leg. So that's where our issue is coming through. That's actually a really good demonstration. I'm glad this happened. Remember when I said that the names needed to be exactly the same? Well, because I'm in R15 right now and not R6, which the armor is made for, and the names are not exactly the same, so it's not actually finding those parents. So if I go to avatar settings, let me just save this real quick. Yeah, sure. You can learn from me, Roblox. All right, close this, and let's see if I remember where to do this. R6 only, save changes, save and restart, whatever. All right, cool. So now if I go ahead and join, boom, we have our armor, and you see it comes with me. You can tell that this is wooden and this is cardboard, and that's good. All right, so this has been a really long video. I wanted to get through everything today, but unfortunately, I don't want to make a 3 hour long video. So this will be it for today's video. We'll get through the UI in the next video, and if you guys want to see how to add the saving too, I can make that a third video. I wasn't planning on doing the actual saving, just giving you guys a setup. But if you want to see how to actually implement the saving, then definitely let me know in the comments. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next part, which won't take too long, I promise, and we'll get that UI settled. Anyways, take care, guys.